Howdy, Ags. Welcome to Aggie Growth Hacks, the podcast sponsored by the McFerrin Center for Entrepreneurship at Texas A&M, where we help entrepreneurs improve their business, connect with other Aggie entrepreneurs, and support one another. I'm your host, Greg Martin, Fighting Texas Aggie class of 2001.
And I'm your co-host, Chris Hunter, Fighting Texas Aggie class of 1998.
Whoop! Well, we got a little story for you, Ags. Nathan Vajdos, Fighting Texas Aggie class of 98. I know Chris loves that, is a managing partner of Regis Energy Partners, a startup that is experiencing hypersonic growth as they help to solve the problem of energy stability in the Texas power grid. Anyone who's been in Texas during the last 2 Februaries knows how critical this is and how important their company is. I mean, do you remember Snowmageddon?
So pass it back and listen up to Nathan as he shares some good bull.
Welcome back, Ags. Nathan, thank you so much for joining us. Ever since that we got on the phone probably, 4 or 5 months ago, I knew that I wanted to have you on the Aggie Growth Hacks podcast, not only to talk about your business, but to tell your story and to really highlight the amazing growth that you've had. I mean, I can't wait for our listeners to hear from you and to learn from you. Thank you so much for your willingness to join us.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm honored to be on.
Well, before we dive into it, let's talk about what it's like being a former student down in Houston and then being able to come back to the motherland, come back to A&M. What do you miss about no longer being a student at A&M?
Yeah, no, great question. I really miss the common bond that you share with each student, being a part of something bigger than yourself. It is A&M. You know, we're Aggies first, right? Even the student organizations, right? They're Aggie Democrats, Aggie Republicans. It's always Aggie first. And so collectively, I think of that as the spirit of Aggie land. It's what binds us together. It's the common thing in the current times, regardless of the politics or the business. It's there's a lot of intersectionality, and all of that's about this, identity. And so, what's nice about A&M, regardless of your background, your color, your creed, is that you're an Aggie first. And so, that's just something we all know it. We gravitate to it, whether we can touch it. But all of us former students know that we see that, unfortunately, in our business and our interactions with people. And so, that's what I miss most about being a student.
Love it. Absolutely love that. We all bleed maroon, right?
That's right.
All right. So, Nathan, why don't you tell us a little bit about your business, Regis Energy Partners, and tell us a little bit about your entrepreneurial journey. I know that one of my favorite things about Aggie Growth Hacks is that I get to learn everyone's entrepreneurial journey. So why don't you let us know a little bit about yours?
Yeah, no, appreciate the question. Regis Energy Partners, we're a standalone storage independent power producer. We're focused on the ERCOT market. We create value through alignment of interest through our partners. We deliver that value by focusing on speed and simplicity. In a simpler way, we develop, construct, and operate battery energy storage projects, which is used to be a very boring topic and has become a very hot topic since Winter Storm Uri, and the people's awareness that is the electricity and what it means, the life that it provides, is not something we could take for granted. So I went from having a fairly boring, career in the power plant world, even wind farms, they're still kind of boring, to all of a sudden I was the topic of the day.
So Nathan, as you kind of do that, so explain how your company or a company like yours really supports ERCOT. What is ERCOT, and then how did that really come to the forefront with the Snowmageddon that we had a couple of years ago?
So ERCOT is an acronym for the Electric Reliability Council of Texas. ERCOT is really the traffic cop at the intersection. ERCOT doesn't own any assets, but what ERCOT does, and what's unique about it, it's a power grid, but it's a power grid completely contained within the boundary of the state of Texas. And that's particularly relevant for a number of reasons. Number one, much like A&M, it allows that those participating in the market don't have to go to DC for permission to do anything. So we're completely islanded in many ways than the rest of the country, which affords us, amazing simplicity to execute. It's a pure play market. You can come in, and if you have the capital or can arrange the capital, you have a good idea. There's a very clear path how to participate in the market. So it's free market capitalism at its best in many ways. Very little regulation in many ways, and the market is beneficial to ratepayers. Ratepayers meaning you and I as business owners, you and I as homeowners, as our podcast listeners, just paying their electricity bill. Because when you have competition and you actually have a fair amount of competition, the market always reveals the best solutions. And so that's just a great, very dynamic place to be. So that's what ERCOT is. What we, as a privately owned company, we participate in that by developing projects. Historically, out of grad school, I worked in commercial real estate, and then I got inspired by T. Boone Pickens. And I had a buddy, an Aggie buddy of mine, who was out of construction science. He was building roads for an Enron wind farm, and I just thought it was cool. I didn't know anything about wind farms except for what T. Boone was saying and the Pickens plan and Boone's Army. But I just thought that was much better than commercial real estate, which was fun and interesting, but it didn't inspire me. And so I just started reading. Literally downloaded a development book from the American Wind Energy Association and read their development handbook. And I said, let's go be developers. So we still had jobs, and every spare minute we started quote unquote developing projects, and which really meant we didn't really know what we were doing. But in 2007 or 8,
that's very honest of you.
No one did in 2007 or 8. So we went down that road, and what we learned we swung for the fences, and we missed, but we learned a ton. I went to our first industry conference. I still had my A&M student ID, so I could, I'm writing these checks out of my pocket to go to these very expensive industry conferences, and I used my student ID to get in on the student rate, and I went, and all of a sudden I realized, just by being interested, all of a sudden I doubled my knowledge base, which may sound like, wow, this guy didn't know much, but all of a sudden you realize, well, nobody knows a lot. So if I just read and take an interest and get to work, all of a sudden, a year later, you find you have a ton of experience into something that I was interested in, and that I, turned out actually being I was fairly decent at. And so that eventually led to several thousand megawatts of wind, which means several large wind farms from the East Coast to the West Coast. Dabbled and touched on some solar, to eventually getting into. I was working for a company out of California to getting into battery energy storage, and its short version would be. As more and more intermittent, meaning not on demand power plants come online, highly predictable, right? We know when the sun goes up and we know when it goes down, and we know what causes the wind. We have bright meteorologists there, at all of our good universities that tell us what causes these things, but they're not on demand. And so our power, though, we want to flip the light switch and we want the lights to come on. And so the wind and the sun, regardless of the politics, the fuel is free. There's no cost for the fuel, so there's no commodity exposure. And so once they're built, they're very predictable. They're very boring. Now they're not fully, on demand, and so you need a big shock absorber. So that's what a battery is. A battery is just a big shock absorber. And so there's a strategic way about how you might address this problem of wanting consistent demand, but supply is intermittent, and then the very dynamic nature of our power grid. It's got power plants at various locations, but we have homes at many more locations and businesses. And so how do you match that up? A battery energy storage or an energy storage project is really a shock absorber or a bit of a matchmaker. And so we seek to find those locations that are volatile and congested and place our batteries at those locations. And then we effectively arbitrage the power. So we buy low and we sell high. We fill up the tub in the middle of the night or at any given time when there's excess supply of electricity on the grid and prices are low. And then when prices are high, of course, we can sell into that. So it's the equivalent of, you've got I'm here in the west end of Houston in Memorial, and I need to get to a meeting downtown. And, that could be a $10 million meeting that if I was successful. So I would literally pay $1,000 to get a toll lane to get there in 1 minute. And so we're that synthetic infrastructure. We come out right when everybody needs the power. And so we sit and wait. And so that concept of buying low and selling high, that's energy arbitrage. And so we try to find places on the electricity grid where we can put a energy storage project to effectively arbitrage the power. So yeah, appreciate the question. That's how we do it. That's what we do. And seems to be working out all right.
What kind of batteries are we talking about? I mean, there's all sorts of batteries.
A whole lot of double A's. It's got to be like millions and millions and millions of double A.
In many ways, it's not that different. These are lithium-ion batteries. We didn't want to be in the science project business of, there's anytime you hear something new, there's always 2,500 new ways in which to provide power. There's flow batteries, nickel iron, air batteries. And we went with the most proven technology because we were not in the business of manufacturing business. We're in the business of delivering value through the velocity of capital. And so focusing on the most proven bankable product by which we could, layer a business onto is what we focused on. So yeah, Chris, a great question. They're lithium ion batteries. And then there's a lot around that. We're fortunate that we have a lot of supply locked up, and so a lot of alignment of interest around how we got there.
So are these like buildings that you're putting these in that are like, that's the infrastructure?
No, actually, we put them on. They look very much like trailers you'd find on the back of an 18-wheeler. They are 8 feet wide, 9 feet tall, and generally 30 to 40 feet long. They're self-contained. They have their own fire suppression. They're monitored 24 hours a day. The best thing we can do to avoid any risk is to space them apart. We actually don't want them in a building or on a building. They need to be on a freestanding pad, gravel pad, very much secure, so that we can be in position when the power prices spike or when there's an event whereby we need to provide some shock absorber services, if you will, to the grid. Those are called ancillary services that we can be prepared to act and take advantage of that opportunity, meaning make money. And so I know they're very contained. We want to have a very simple execution. And all of our projects are identical. So we remove the complexity by having a standardized design. And that's how, although we have a very distributed approach to getting our projects online, we achieve scale. This will sound very contrarian, but through distribution.
So Nathan, as you do these projects and you develop and you build them, I mean, the banker in me is saying, okay, well that's got to be very, very capital intensive. That's got to be a lot of stuff, a lot of cash that you're outlaying, and it's got a huge value, and you're providing that value through that arbitrage. But you're still a relatively young company. Where are you kind of in that development stage of being able to develop some of these things for you and your company and your investors, stuff like that?
No, great question. Well, yeah, full disclosure, we just started, although my partner and I, he's an Aggie as well. He came from the investment finance, investment banking world. I came from the development side. We had both worked in either for private equity or in private equity world in understanding capital allocations and the importance of velocity of capital, which really just means, an internal rate of return, right? An IRR or a CAGR business if you want to get, into more advanced level classes. It is capital intensive. Each of these projects, there's the hardware and the construction, and then there's the interconnection cost. And so collectively, that could be anywhere from on the low end, $5 million to $6-7 million per project for the size of projects, which our projects are very kind of, small and bite sized. They're, maybe a third of an acre, 100 by 150 foot pad connected to, next to a substation, very bite sized. But yeah, to your question about hardware, we were able to, over the past 10 to 15 years, build some really good relationships and a good reputation in the industry where we had what we thought was a differentiated idea in how to access the market, and not do this to just develop and flip a project like a real estate developer. We wanted to actually own, because we believe that volatility has nowhere to run in the ERCOT, meaning the more wind and solar you get, they're great, they're inexpensive, but they are volatile in terms of price points. And so we sought to help solve the problem of volatility and, of course, profit from that by deploying these. And so we put together a really good investment thesis about how you might approach the ERCOT market. And that received some really nice traction in the marketplace. And so we aligned our interest with really, as a result of a longer process, two key parties that we were introduced to really helped us put our vision in place, where we're actually going to be now constructing projects and owning and operating. One of those parties is a publicly traded company that's in our space. Not really at will. We'll have some press releases from the time we record this until it hits the airwaves. But one of those, a publicly traded company in our space that is I'll say broadly in the power generation and technology space. And they really wanted to access the ERCOT market. So we formed a joint venture with that group and went on down the road. And we got a little bit of rope, if you will, just enough to hang ourselves. And what that means in literal business terms is we were able to get some hardware on order and start spending money on development, right? Because to your point, it's a capital intensive business.
That's awesome.
And so that was and we did that because they wanted to access the market to operate our projects. And we said, here's a great conduit to access the market. We can be that conduit. We're willing to not not have to require a huge fee on the front end or at exit. We really wanted to get to owning the business and the projects. And so that allowed us to avoid private equity. Private equity is great. It can do some amazing things in a capital intensive world, but we really didn't enjoy paying us, effectively a 17% credit card, which is, for those that don't know, that's about what it's like taking money from private equity, about 17% interest rate. And the other side of that was, so that got us development. So the development was, in our minds, hardware and a project. But at the end of the day, to build that, we needed the, call it an average of $5-6 million a project to really put each of these into play. And so my partner, who had worked at Tudor Pickering Holt, very esteemed group here in Houston in the investment banking space, we ran a process, and that resulted in a large fund. Again, we'll have a press release not too far between now and when it goes public. But we ran a closed-end fund, which meant that fund was perfectly fine not exiting. And they really wanted some long-term exposure. They liked the approach that we had, which is instead of putting $100 million in one location, we could have put $100 million at 12 or 13 locations. So the diversification play really was a nice setup. Mm-hmm. And we didn't just have a set of 10 projects. We had a portfolio of projects, which we'll probably talk about a bit. So that collective effort. And then when we structured our transaction with the fund, similarly speaking, we didn't need a huge development fee on the front end. We wanted to align our interest and actually have ownership long term. And so we were willing to, if you're familiar with capital structures, have a pref and a promote and a waterfall structure that basically afforded us if we could develop the most lucrative projects, a very lucrative participation in those projects, which and for the business school students that maybe are listening, what that means is basically the more profitable they become above a certain return rate, we get a lot more of the cash flow from the project. Mm-hmm. So that was just very encouraging that we were able to continue to align our interests with each of our capital partners. Mm-hmm. And that is really, we've really been blessed around that. So happy to talk more about the specifics of that as best we can.
So Nathan, as your company is growing, I mean, obviously you're a very fast growing company and you're dealing with numbers that for some entrepreneurs are mind boggling. But my question is that what are the values that your company has established that allows you to navigate such explosive growth so quickly and still stay on track?
Yeah, no, great question. And really, we really feel like we're a steward in the position. Just to kind of cap that off from the last question, what this resulted in was a $400 million equity commitment. This was all prior to, regardless of the popularity or unpopularity, we focused on having an economic business, right? Our lemonade stand needed to make money as selling lemonades, regardless of what the federal or local governments wanted to do. So because of that, to your question about company values and, this phenomenal opportunity, I would say, not really success yet, the phenomenal opportunity that we've been blessed to steward is we really focused on the alignment of interest. If we really believed in our business, we were willing to delay, a big exit. We were willing to delay taking a development fee. We were willing to delay taking, the business owners who are out there will appreciate this, particularly if you've had some success. We continue to delay taking distributions from the business. We pour all that right back into business. And so that's kind of the first tenet is we focus 100% on alignment of interest. And then taking that down to not just the role that someone's playing. It's one thing to structure that up on paper, but at the end of the day, we really focus on the person, not the role that they're fulfilling. And so we've all been gifted. We've truly just been gifted a lot of skill sets. Whether it's emotional intelligence, maybe you're a financial modeler, at the end of the day, there's still a person there. And so when we focus on the person and show them that let's focus on what we're good at, what we're interested in, and there's also it's our job to remove those things that people are either not interested in or not good at, because we can't be good at everything, and we're all gifted differently. And so when we focus on the person, it's really set on a foundation of trust. And when we trust them, we can align our interest. And so we can align how we compensate our partners. We can care about our engineering firm's profit margins. We actually care about that. And then, so focusing on the person, the first one was alignment of interest. The last one, which is really a value for us, and I think it really does appeal to my short attention span, which is speed and simplicity. I laugh, and when people want to talk about, either their GPAs or whatever. And I was always seeking to get things to the lowest common denominator. And so in our world with energy arbitrage and infrastructure funds and private equity, when we focused on having just a lemonade stand that we could make profit on by delivering value, and then saying, guys, we don't need to get paid today. We can focus on delivering it. It doesn't mean we don't take paychecks, but we focused on speed and simplicity. So we focus every day by, instead of, if we've got a choice between a complex project and a simple project, we always choose the simple project. There's enough shots and there's enough customers out there. If we focus on with customers, we'd rather have fewer people at the table. It just adds a ton of transparency for us as having speed and simplicity. And then I can articulate that much better. And then as I practice that message, whether it's focusing on the person, when I have a simple message, it always resonates, right? People remember things in 3. And so that's why, to your question, we focus on alignment of interest, focusing on the person, not the role. And then how we do that is through speed and simplicity.
Absolutely love that. So Nathan, one of the things that really we've noticed with businesses as they grow is, that they have big, hairy, audacious goals, right? And these are the big 5 to 10 year moonshots, right? So what is your big, hairy, audacious goal?
Yeah, simply put, we're seeking to build the most profitable energy arbitrage portfolio in ERCOT. That, in specific terms, is 1,000 megawatts in construction and operations in the next 36 months.
Nice. So what does that look like? What does that even mean, right? Because I know I don't really know what a megawatt is. I've only heard what is that 1.21 gigawatts, right?
That's right. Yeah. So what that means in specific terms is to make it a relatable point, right? So to the Doc Brown's reference, 1.21 gigawatts. I think the actual conversion there is probably 1.21 gigawatts, which is 1,210 megawatts, which the reason that's relevant is if you look at your utility bill, and this might be the first time you look at it, and if you look at the unit of measure, which is the economic quantification, if you will, of what you're buying, something, so many t-shirts, the electricity is measured in power over time. And so power would be the kilowatts, right? You're familiar with watts, like a 60 watt battery bulb. And then over time is the period of time that it's consumed. So watt hours, and then kilowatt hours. There's 1,000 kilowatt, 1,000, the kilo, and then megawatts is one more set of 3 zeros. So back to your question and our projects, what this then looks like physically. So I said each of our projects is roughly 1/3 of an acre and they're roughly each, 10 megawatts each, 9.9 by for regulatory reasons, is that we'll have 100 of these in construction and or in operations in the next 36 months. And so if we focus on delivering, 10 projects per quarter, that's 100 megawatts per quarter, and 400 megawatts a year. And then you can easily see, we should on our current run rate be able to deliver, at least a gigawatt and maybe 1.21 gigawatts of battery storage projects here in the next 36 months. And then it's important, on any of these goals to measure them and be specific, right? They're SMART goals. And so, what that really means when we comparison will steal all your joy, but it's on a highest dollars per megawatt in revenue for a diversified portfolio across the state of Texas, meaning we don't want to just have volume. We actually incentivized in our agreements with our joint venture partners to have the highest economic outputs per project, so that we're always getting better in terms of the economic performance, right? We're not just getting scale, we're actually getting increase in scale and profitability at the same time. So we're excited for the opportunity. We're amazed that we are stewarded this opportunity from our partners, and we think they keep us honest because of our documents show that we only really get to whatever goal this leads us to if we by getting them actually online.
Nathan, it sounds like as you're kind of describing not only what you're doing and how you're laying it all out, but you've got to be able to execute not only on the things that building and developing the sites, but arbitraging better than anybody else, because it's that ability to arbitrage better than anybody else that's going to allow you to have that highest economic profitability. So thank you so much for really breaking down something that's super, super complex to a dude that, hey, I flick on a light and I better see a light bulb go on. If not, I can change a light bulb, but that's about it. Anything beyond that, I'm going to call somebody else. But let's roll right now into our lightning round. Real quick, super simple, one rule. You got to answer each question in 30 seconds or less. What is your favorite hack? Could be a business hack, a personal hack. What can we learn from you?
Yeah, favorite hack I received from a good friend of mine, Dougal Cameron, which is, we call it a list of stresses and joys. And it's easy to say, well, these things cause me stress and these things bring me joy. But what's more important, the hack part of that, is to focus on those things that actually take away stress and those things that take away joy. It's really important to, it's an accretive thing, which means it's net positive, to focus on that pieces. So we do that in our business by focusing on things that we're good and interested in at. And then it's our job as the leaders of the organization to remove those things that people are not good nor interested in.
Love it. Okay, so what is the favorite advice that you've ever been given, and 1,998 points for if you tell us how you applied it?
Sure. So the favorite advice that I was given was actually, I just heard it from the Marines in the mini podcast I listened to, which is slow is smooth and smooth is fast. You can tell when I get excited by my tenor and pace of my how I speak, I tend to speed up. And then how I applied it, which is you really get a kick out of. So when I was an employee and we moved to Houston, you can look at my LinkedIn, I worked for Calpine. I was in charge of the center part of the country. And I literally printed out. I went my first day. I knew that if I sped up too fast, I would make too many mistakes. So I printed out slow down. And I had this big monitor that I had. A lot of us have two monitors. I had one big monitor, and I put slow down, and I taped it to four sides of my monitor. And it was my reminder that slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And so, yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to embarrass myself with that's my hack. It's very simple.
Love it. Nathan, what's your superpower?
Really, my superpower is never giving up. My partner would perhaps more eloquently say he's relentlessly resourceful. And then kind of to complement that, my willingness to just start and get very comfortable with not knowing all the answers. I go back to when I got into the wind business. I literally went home. We're living in the one-bedroom apartment. My wife, she's an Aggie. She's teaching then. And she's like, why are you staying up every night reading this thing you printed out about wind, which this is 2007. I said, I don't know. This is just interesting. So I just started and didn't know, but no one knew anything. And so that was just so, I look back on that and with real sentiment, frankly. So yeah, that's my superpower. Never give up, and my willingness to start and just figure it out.
Love it. So Nathan, what gets you out of bed and excited about your business?
Yeah, no, great question. Really having the answer is that there's this window of opportunity, and in any market that you have, right? If you just look at capital flows into and out of different things for many different reasons. It could be politics, it could be regulatory, it could just be the sentiment of the bank president at a local level, right? He's just got too much exposure. And so the window of opportunity that my partner and I both saw in terms of the volatility that was coming, we just looked at the basic statistics and said, hey, look, there's many more transmission constraints, that window of opportunity. And then that gets me excited. Which really gets me even more excited is the attributes that I learned at A&M and even before then at Judson High School. I was a role player, to be clear, out of a very successful high school football program. But then as part of the core cadets at A&M, and then going back to getting my MBA at A&M, all of the best of attributes. Now I get to lead a team. I've earned the honor, and I say every day, to motivate them and remove them. So to motivate them and to remove those constraints that allow them from being the best person that they can be. And so again, back to kind of the values, it's not coincident. It's not canned when I say we focus on the person. We focus on removing those things that, slow them down. If I do one thing and I walk across the hall to our team and I say, what can I do? What can I remove from your plate today? And so those are the attributes that I, observed, whether it was from football coaches or, university leaders or in business school where we got to practice some of that I still get excited about. I'm a pretty excitable guy, but I really get excited about those two things.
Nathan, how can the Aggie Growth Hacks family, the Aggie Network, get in touch with you and support you and your team?
Sure. Well, until this year, I would have said every home game, section 244, row 5, seat 1 and 2 for the rest of my life. But I was informed earlier this year our seats are going to get turned into suites. And
you're one of the ones that was affected.
Yeah. So we're in the overhang right between the uprights. Anyhow, so I would say there. We have a great group of 12 Aggies. We all sit together. So we're figuring out what section we'll be in. But otherwise, Regis-Energy, that's the hyphen, or just the not the lower one, the middle one. So regis-energy.com, or my phone number, which I'm happy to give out. Love helping Aggies. 210-831-5144. It's my cell phone. It's my business phone. It's simple. So love the opportunity to help people out. Please do call me. I will call you back. If this is remotely interesting, or you're just curious, or maybe you don't think batteries are great. Happy to have that discussion and gig them.
Well, Nathan, thank you so much for coming on, and your generosity for coming on and supporting other Aggie entrepreneurs that are listening to this podcast. And really just thank you.
You're welcome. I consider it an honor. That I can't believe how hard our team, how hard they let me coach them. I can't believe that we're here, and it's a dream come true. And just hope I can steward the resources that I've been given well. I'm living the American dream.
Well, how about that, Ags? Was that awesome or what? I know that I had a lot of things that I wrote down on my notebook here. They just dropped value bomb after value bomb after value bomb. What was your biggest takeaway there, Greg?
Well, I loved how he talked about, as they were growing, how it was critical to make sure that they got the alignment of interests across the board. And this is a huge, while the technology is pretty unique in and of itself, but really it's making sure that all the players caught their vision and was able to kind of work through and say, yes, this is something that we want to support. This is something that we want to come alongside with. And since we've actually recorded this episode, they have had some he talked about having some significant investments. Y'all go check it out. If you haven't Googled it, go ahead and Google Regis Energy Partners and see the massive amounts of investment that Nathan and his team have been able to pull together, because this is such a needed solution to a pretty big problem. And it's all done because they aligned where they were going and with everybody along the way. What about you, Chris? What'd you take away?
So I 100% agree with you on that, but mine was that, and it just kind of stuck out to me here, is that he talked about, instead of investing into one big mega, battery station facility, right? Is that he talked to that they did a whole bunch of mini ones, right? And that to me was an awesome idea, and something that a lot of us entrepreneurs really, we like putting our eggs in one big basket, right? And instead of saying, hey, instead of doing this mega project that will, yes, obviously be very useful, but it's really would only be useful for one of those substations, right? Is that, why don't we just put battery backups for each one of those, right? And just keep building those out. Mm-hmm. I think that's ingenious, in my opinion, and it diversifies that whole idea.
And I think that it diversifies the risk. I mean, again, since we've recorded this, it made major news. I mean, back in Moore County, North Carolina, where I used to live. So like, I still have friends back there where they were talking about how the entire county went dark because of something that happened to all the different substations. So imagine if they had this solution there and they were able to redeploy that energy very, very quickly. I'm not technical enough to know if that would solve the problem, but really, I think that that's also part of the genius that Nathan and his team said, look, we're going to not put all our eggs in one basket. It might have great reward, but we're also going to spread that risk out over different areas. So that's food for thought. Pretty cool. As an afterthought, but Well, Alex, that's going to do it for this episode of Aggie Growth Hacks. We hope that you enjoyed it. If you're not connected with Nathan and his team, make sure that you do that. And when you're online, connect with Aggie Growth Hacks, connect with Chris, connect with me. Make sure you check out the McFerrin Center as well. We appreciate all their support. While you're on the web, check out AggieGrowthHacks.com, where you can hear this episode, all of our previous episodes, as well as some of the other great content that we've produced. And finally, if you enjoyed this episode, give it a big gig on the thumbs up and like and subscribe so that we can get Aggie Growth Hacks out to more ags.
We also want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor, the McFerrin Center for Entrepreneurship at Texas A&M University. Since 1999, the McFerrin Center for Entrepreneurship has served as the hub of entrepreneurship for Texas A&M. If you're an Aggie entrepreneur or even a wantrepreneur, head on over to their website to find a program that's right for you. Just head over to aggiegrowthhacks.com/McFerrin right now. Well, Ags, join us next time when we connect with another great Aggie entrepreneur and learn how they hack their growth. Until then, I'm Chris Hunter.
And I'm Greg Martin. Thanks and gig 'em.